I don't have an agenda, so I don't know just where we're going with this.
Mr. Mayor, would you like to call the meeting to order?
Okay, let's call this meeting to order.
With your permission, Mayor, I'll start down the agenda items.
Okay, yeah.
The first item on the agenda is approval for the minutes from August 11th, 2020 meeting.
Make the motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you.
I'll second the motion. Kate, do you want to call the roll?
Yes, I'll call the roll. Ryan Hubble.
Present.
Chief Hargis.
Yes.
Mike Fisher.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Chief Freeman.
Yes.
And is Anthony Bologna on? I don't believe we have Anthony with us today.
I think he was on earlier. He must have dropped off.
And I'm not seeing Barry Bryant. Oh, wait.
He's here. Okay, with the minutes approved, we'll now go to Barry for the current market and fund performance review. Barry?
You're muted, Barry.
Okay, I believe I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, do you have the report or can you access the report? If you can't, that's okay. I can read the necessary numbers. Let me see, can we screen share? I don't know if I can do this. This is advanced, the host disabled screen sharing. Okay, fortunately I can't screen share. I say fortunately because I'd probably botch it. So I'm just going to read the necessary numbers for you to understand things. So I'm going to talk in the following order about the economy, about COVID, about politics, and then about how all those impact the market, what the market did, what the market's done recently, and then finally our returns there we go. There's the report. Okay, so we will get to the report. We're all sort of at the report. So let's go to the fourth page. So cover 2, 3, stop right there. Okay. Chart in the upper left-hand corner, number in the upper left-hand corner of that chart. The GDP rose 33.1%. That is the biggest GDP rise ever. I told you about this number and roughly what its magnitude would be quite some time ago and pointed out that it would come. It was announced last, let's see now, so it's 2 weeks ago at the end of the week, right in front of the election. And it was spun as I predicted it would be, although it wasn't a difficult prediction. The Republicans said, you know, we're back, everything's great. The Democrats said we're not where we were at the end of 2019. And, you know, that just is what it is. We think the underpinning of the economy right now is reasonably strong. Looking at other numbers, looking at corporate earnings that are coming in, and we are relatively sanguine on where the market is going. And so that's all I'm going to say about the economy. The market. Oh, I'm sorry, COVID. There was a huge announcement yesterday, and I'm sure you all saw it, but I want to be sure everybody understands how important it was. Pfizer announced it has a vaccine with 90% efficacy. Now, it's preliminary. There is a long way to go. They could still find people get illnesses or there are side effects from this vaccine. However, that has not happened yet. They were expecting 60% efficacy. 90% plus is in the realm of the measles vaccine, which is a standard vaccine that's been around for a long time. And Pfizer thinks they can get 15 to 20 million doses ready by the end of the year. There is a second vaccine from a second company with similar technology that may likewise prove helpful. And so looking at all those things together, this was hugely positive news. The market went crazy. Small cap stocks went up 9% yesterday. And this has a lot of implications, not just for the market doing well, for the market changing. Yesterday, everything kind of reversed itself. There is the prospect of the market going up, inflation reviving, interest rates going up. If that happened, it could cause a regime change in stocks, with value stocks going up and growth stocks going down. And in fact, some of the large growth stocks that have been driving the market in the past, the so-called FANG stocks, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Google, Netflix, plus Microsoft, those stocks did not do so well. A couple of them went down yesterday. And of course, they're facing headwinds from the government and deregulation. And from that, I'll move into politics. It appears as though Biden is going to be the president. It appears as though the Senate is going to be Republican. Although Biden won the presidency, as most of you have probably read, this was no blue wave. It was almost like a Republican victory, except for the presidency, because the Democrats had talked about the Senate maybe being 56-44 in their favor. And it's probably going to be, assuming the Georgia Senate races go for the Republicans, it's probably going to be 52-48 against them in favor of the Republicans. The Democrats lost a few seats in the House rather than gaining, and they did not gain in state legislatures. The Democrats poured huge amounts of money into state legislative races because these legislatures will use the census data to engage in political redistricting, and they really didn't get any traction. So we truly have divided government with a Democratic president, a Democratic House, a Republican Senate, no changes in the state houses. And the market seemed to like that, seems to like COVID, seems to like division and gridlock, which is what we're likely to get. And all that ended up being very positive. Now, the market, and now I'm going to go back. The market in the quarter, domestic stocks up 9. Foreign stocks were up half that, but not emerging. Emerging market stocks were up almost 10. Developed foreign stocks were up only 5. Small cap domestic stocks were up, but they were only up about 5. The gains, the big gains in domestic stocks were all in large cap, and the bonds were up about 0.5 point. So obviously, what you wanted to be in this quarter was the same thing you wanted to be in for the last 10 years. You wanted to be in large cap and not small cap. You wanted to be in domestic, not foreign. You wanted to be in growth, not value. Growth, trumped value. Once again, it was a quarter that looked like the average quarter of the last 10 years. However, that broke at the end of August. September was down, not enough down to take back the gains from July and August. But September was down, October was down, and then with this COVID announcement, the election, the markets popped back up. I've been scrambling around doing various things this morning. I don't know how it opened, and I don't want to focus you too much short term, but I have to tell you, this feels like a regime change. It's much too early, because this was really just yesterday. Much too early to say that, but it certainly bears paying watch and paying attention to. By regime change, I mean a rotation from growth to value, possibly a rotation from domestic to foreign in terms of where the outperformance is, and an end to the domination of the FANG stocks, which are extremely expensive. So all bear watching. We're not making any suggested changes to your asset allocation based on that. I just wanted you to be aware of it. So any questions on the economy, on COVID, on politics of the market before I go to our returns? Okay, hearing none, let's start flipping pages. I think this is on page 8. Stop. No. One more. This one. Yeah. Okay. So We are a slightly pro-cyclical portfolio. We should do better than average in a quarter like this. We did a lot better than average as things turned out. We made 5.9%. The average pension portfolio for pension funds of all sizes was 5. So we beat the average by 90 basis points. We ranked in the 17th percentile, which means we outperformed about 83% of other pension portfolios. A couple of things helped us. We have a decent slug of emerging market stocks. They did the best. That helped. And I'm talking about asset allocations now. We also, our performance in the Vanguard Extended Market outperformed the index. Now, that has to do with pricing, when things are priced. We should basically match those indexes over time. So that's kind of a fluke that fell into this quarter, and what this quarter gains, the next quarter loses. But that contributed to the outperformance in this quarter. Baylord continued to do well. They did 20 basis points better than Odyssey. To remind you, Baylord has retail exposure, but really initiated it about 3 or 4 years ago. So they initiated after the Amazon trends are very clear. A lot of the people that do what Baylord does are having trouble with malls because of COVID and because of the effect of Amazon. And Baylord's not so affected by that. So Baylord continues to do well for us. Johnson beat their benchmark by 40 basis points, 1 to 0.6. That's the number in the lower left-hand corner of that column. So it was a great quarter. If you look at the top, you can see our ranking 17, 14, 14, 19, 11. I mean, they're good across the page. So this portfolio is performing very, very well. I like to say that, you know, our job is to worry. And now, of course, what I'm worried about is this has been a great portfolio really for the last decade. We haven't had it for the whole last decade, but if we had, you know, we'd have even more money. It may not be the portfolio going forward because of these various rotations that I've talked about. That's something we have to think about internally. But what happened yesterday was just yesterday. Maybe it'll go away and the market will trade back down for the balance of the year. But things look reasonably positive at this point. Any question on our returns? Okay. Hearing none, I'm going to move to rebalancing. With the, I have not sent a trade ticket in because I was talking with Tracy this morning about how much money we need to keep in our fund for payments. So what we're doing right now is we're putting a certain amount of money in cash at these meetings to cover expenses for the next quarter, and then we're replenishing to that level. The level we're using right now is 300,000. It's not enough. I'm not sure why we picked 300. I mean, I know why we picked it. I picked it in consultation with the custodial banker, but the number's just not right. It's not enough. We're spending about $750,000 a quarter. And so we need to replenish to 800,000, I think. So I am going to ask, and I'll do all my asks before I turn it back to you guys, but I'm going to ask that you give me a vote to replenish to 800,000 on a regular basis. And I will always tell you what, and I'm not doing it, you're doing it, you're signing off on everything, but that's the recommendation I'm making. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, with the stocks doing as well as they have, we need to do some fairly significant rebalancing, and that will require sending 700,000 out of our large cap core, 950,000 out of our SMID cap core, and 300,000 from our cash. Now, I did say to replenish to 800,000, but our cash right now is $1.1 million. So we just got a big slug of money from tax receipts. So we're actually right now over allocated in cash. So 700,000 from large cap, 950,000 from SMID cap, 300,000 from cash, all to go to Johnson. That totals to $1,950,000. So the two things I'm going to ask you for are to approve 800,000 as the new cash replenishment total to which we will rebalance in the quarter. And I'm also asking you to confirm the movement of 700,000 from large cap, 950,000 from SMID cap, 300,000 from cash into the Johnson account. And that is just to rebalance back to our existing targets.
Hey, Barry, sorry to interrupt. I just got a text from Anthony. He said he's stuck in the waiting room. So I don't know whoever's controlling the meeting can look at that and let him in real quick.
This is Kate. I think Stephen left the meeting.
No, I'm here. He joined.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I can't see who's trying to join or not join when the screen's shared. So.
Okay, so Barry, you're waiting on a motion to confirm the recommendations that you gave. Is that correct?
Yes, two recommendations: to use 800,000 as the level to which to replenish the cash because we spend about $750,000 a quarter, and the second one is to move $1,950,000 from two equity accounts and the cash account to Johnson to rebalance to the targets already approved by the trustees.
I'll make that motion. What Barry said.
I'll second it.
Kate, you want to call the vote?
Yes. Ryan Hubble.
Aye.
Chief Hargis.
Yes.
Chief Freeman.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Mr. Silvers. David Silvers. I see that I think you're just on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
That's a yes vote.
Thank you. And Anthony,
Yes.
excellent. All roll has been called.
Okay, Barry, do you have anything else for us?
I do. I have one more item that has to do with security procedures. I raised the issue of security procedures at the last meeting and gave this elaborate dissertation on how we should conduct our relationship with the bank. I think I was right to raise the issue. I did not raise it in the right way. I am not a security expert, and what I should have done is I should have talked with a custodial bank and found out what our options are. I have now done that, and first of all, let me put one thing to rest. There are basically two issues here. One is trading, and the other is sending money out. I wasn't wild about the bank's procedures for trading, but trading is not such a big deal because when we trade, we're taking something, typically equity, like we're doing now, and we're converting that equity to cash. And if we're giving it to Johnson, we're putting it in an account, and all this exists within the custodial bank. So when we convert or when we trade, we're really not at risk of losing money. So the money might be out of the market, but in terms of catastrophic events, it's not very catastrophic. The catastrophic event is if we wire money to a bank in Guadalajara. Not that there's anything wrong with the bank in Guadalajara, it's just not our bank, which is essentially what somebody tried to do with this other account of mine. And there are procedures in place to keep that from happening. But having said that, I think in my preliminary discussions with the bank, and I wasn't able to finish them, I had to hop off with him to get on this call. I think the right thing to do may be to do what we're doing right now, but to give Kate a PIN number so that she has to use this PIN number every time that a trade is placed. And I think that will increase the security of the system. They do have an online system called the Pivot system, and everything can be done on the Pivot system. I think that's probably the gold standard for security, but I'm thinking that what we're using now is probably good enough. And I think Kate is a little bit leery of placing the trades herself. I think she likes relying on getting the spreadsheets from us, which I don't blame her for. I mean, we're moving $2 million today. That's, a lot of money. And so I think this PIN number is probably the way to go. I'll have a recommendation at the next meeting definitively about that. I don't think you have to take action now. I don't think there is anything at risk. So that is everything to say about security procedures. questions about any of that. And the custodial bank can come to the next meeting or Zoom or in person and talk about it. Our relationship representative is a guy named Craig Dana. He wrote me an email that described all their security systems. It was thorough and complete and everything it should have been.
Okay, Barry, anything else?
Nope, that's it. And that doesn't require any action.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll move to the actuarial evaluation report from Tracy.
Okay. Oh, yep, that's got it right there. I won't spend too much time on this. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, but I will, if it's all right, I will move through this report fairly quickly. That's always easier to do when the news in the report is good. So if we can just scroll to the first page of results there. Yep, right there. We had, as Barry just talked about, we had some nice market gains. We saw, we assumed 6.5% as a long-term investment target, and this year on a market value basis, we saw almost 9.5%. And even when we use our smoothing method and we only recognize a portion of that at a time, we were still at almost a 9% rate of return. So those investment gains, and then we had some small liability gains as well. We went from just over 100% funded last year to almost 104% this year. So a really good year for the plan, and that's the first part of our job in doing the valuation is kind of where we are, and we're sitting in a really good position with this valuation. And then the second thing that we do is we calculate the recommended contribution for the year. And so there in the middle of the page, as a percentage of payroll, you can see that the normal cost stayed relatively steady. That's the cost of the benefits that we expect to be earned in the upcoming year. So that's calculated only for the active participants. That's the liability that we expect to take on during this upcoming year. So we want to make sure that we're paying for that as we're taking it on. We're overfunded, so we have a negative amortization piece there, and so that adjusted with interest. In the normal cost, we've already pulled out the employee and employer percentage of pay contributions. So we're sitting at a total recommended contribution from the city of just over 7%, which we expect to be more than covered by the anticipated tax revenue coming in for this year. So no anticipated need for the city to put in any additional money than what has already been earmarked for the fund. And if we can keep scrolling, Kate. The changes that we've taken into account, the ordinance that I know Bob's going to talk about with the additional enhanced optional forms of payment that have been added to the plan. Those don't impact our valuation. Those are all done on what we call an actuarially equivalent basis. So there's really nothing that affects our funded status or our ongoing funding. We update the mortality tables every year. Middle of the page there, you can see our demographics are staying relatively stable. Average member pay actually went down slightly from last year to this year, and again that contributed to some of the liability gains that we saw in the plan. And then there at the bottom, you can kind of see our market value of assets as well as the smoothed value of assets there at the bottom of the page. Included in that market value of assets number is the I think it was 718,000. Nick, correct me if I'm wrong. The tax revenue that went in, normally it goes in April, May-ish, but some miscommunications this year, that money didn't actually hit until after October 1st. But it is for this plan year, and so we did add it to the assets just as a receivable contribution because it had been made by the time we issued the report. So I'm sorry?
That was 771,000.
771, thank you. I'm not sure where I got 718. So, and then if we can keep scrolling. And that's just a little more breakdown of the funded status. This page, I'm sorry, go to the next page. Yeah, this has the recommended contribution, same percentages that we saw before, but with the corresponding dollar amounts. And you can see again where the anticipated tax revenues of 760,000 are more than enough to cover what's recommended for the year. And then if we can go to the next page, this is our projection page. And I know there's a lot of numbers on this page and they're small, but really the most important column of numbers to look at on this page is the far right, where we've got the funded ratio. And you can see that, again, we anticipate more than the recommended contribution going into the plan, into the foreseeable future. So we really expect to see, if we can continue to get our asset returns, this plan becoming just better and better funded every year, which is good news. And then if we can keep scrolling, that's not really an important page. I mean, it is, but let's go one more. Let's go one more. Yeah, the history of the market value asset returns on this page, I think is always interesting to look at. We can see the rate of investment return on a market value basis there in that bottom table. And you can really see how, good years and bad years, you see there's volatility in the market. Some years we do really well, some years we don't. The smoothed value rates of return are where we kind of mitigate that volatility. And you can see there in that second column from 2016 to present, where the smoothed method of valuing the assets is really doing what it's intended to do. It's intended to smooth that volatility. It's intended to give us an idea of whether we're meeting our targets long term, and happily we are. We're exceeding those targets. So again, that's just really good news. One more, I think that's just a little bit of commentary history, with a typo that I saw this morning that we'll correct next year. And then, yeah, and the rest of the report really is just backup for what we've discussed. At the very end of the report is the accounting information. There's a summary of assumptions and methods. There's a breakdown of how we calculate the smooth value of assets. All of this is detailed to what I've just talked about, but I won't walk you through that unless there are specific questions. No questions? All right, I am planning on attending the City Council meeting early December. I will have a summary of this valuation report prepared for council, and I plan to be at that Zoom meeting to present it then as well. But good news, a good report.
Tracy, that'll be December 1st, and I'll make sure you're on the agenda and keep in contact with you until then.
Sounds good.
Anything else?
I don't have any unless there are questions.
Then we will move on to the quarterly report with Mindy.
Good morning. This is the quarterly administration report. During the quarter, we prepared return of contributions for 1 firefighter and 2 police officers who terminated non-vested. We also had a member who started on non-duty disability during the month of October, and our next retirement is scheduled for February 1st, 2021. There were no drop plan changes during the quarter. We still have 2 members who are in the drop plan currently. For additional services we prepared benefit statements for all the active members. That's as of 10/1/2020. We also prepared drop statements for the 2 members who are in the drop program. And we prepared the cost of living increases for the COLA eligible retirees. and that was approved and sent to US Bank. Now, the cost of living for next year is 1.3%, and that will take effect on January 1st. Sadly, during the quarter, we had 2 deaths. One beneficiary died and one retiree died. The retiree had no living beneficiary, and so payments were stopped on both with our custodian, US Bank. For the federal and state surveys, we submitted the third quarter JC PER quarterly report on behalf of the plan. For benefits and drop balances and return of contributions paid, in August, it was 243,000. September was 242,000. And October was estimated at 244, and that verified at 244,000. For contributions during the quarter, this is through the October 30th payroll. For the city was 106,000, and for the employees, it was just under 48,000. And as Tracy mentioned, we also had a contribution of $771,000 from property tax revenues. That concludes my report. Do you have any questions?
Okay, thank you, Mindy. We'll move on now to Bob West for your legal report.
Thank you, Chief, and good morning, everyone. I have 4 items to report on and bring you up to date on, and probably a couple of things that will require some further action by the board this morning. Just to give you to make sure everyone is aware, I personally have not been involved in this process. I don't know the exact status to date, but the audit is happening right now of the plan. The plan, there's I think some misunderstanding coming into the audit. The plan is and has been audited every 2 years. So it was audited back in 2018. And that is, as I understand it, happening probably as we speak. So presumably you'll see a full audit at your next meeting. The second item is the fiduciary liability insurance application is in process. That happens every year at this time and gives the board members and city employees that do work on your behalf in their function of working on your behalf, protection from any claims of breach of fiduciary liability. We've covered that a number of times in the past, but anybody has any questions about that coverage, happy to fill those. I haven't seen the final application yet in terms of premium. The premium's been steady, the coverages have been steady, but when we get those, we can report on those at the next meeting, but that's in progress as well. The next item, and I guess really the last category to give a little more detail and developments on is the recent amendment, the amendment that you all passed at your August meeting that had 2 significant features to it. It created these new forms of benefit options that weren't available before. Top of that list was the PLOP option, the partial lump sum option, and then we added some joint survivor options, added the term certain options. And then also the mortality tables were updated from a 1984 table to a 2010 table that in addition to being updated, is more specific to fire and police and public safety officer tables. That went to the City Council on August 18th and was passed. And then after the amendment was adopted, Tracy and her team had a couple of questions about some of the practical implementation of the amendment and some specific situations were getting close to retirement or putting in retirement applications that would apply. And then also on the effect of the COLA, just in specific reference to the PLOP benefit, the partial lump sum option benefit. So if we could start with the COLA effect, is that the ordinance as it has been written is on the book. So the amendment didn't, in the language that was adopted for these new different forms of benefits, didn't change anything that's in the current ordinance about the COLA. But our interpretation of the current ordinance as it would affect the PLOP benefit with the COLA is that a COLA will not apply to that lump sum option. The COLA applies only to those retirees who have some form of a monthly retirement benefit. So if someone takes that 25% partial lump sum option, and this is not the way I'm characterizing it, I know isn't actuarially correct, but to give you an idea, the other 75% goes into a monthly benefit. That monthly benefit is going to see the COLA under the way the COLA ordinance is written, which is section 310 of your ordinances, by the way. But the PLOP, that piece of your benefit would not see a COLA. So that's being calculated when the individual retires, receives his lump sum, his or her lump sum. No COLA applies to it. And there's various ways if you want it to apply, and I think that's the question for the board today, that if you want it to apply, Tracy and her team, and I guess ourselves, came up with at least a couple of ways that a COLA could be applied. You could do the actuarial equivalent calculation to that 25% and basically kind of bake in an additional amount, but you have to forecast and pretty much guess a future COLA, and basically what you would have to do is just come up with an estimate as to what it would be or what you want it to be. The second way is to further define the ordinance that, well, what the monthly benefit would have been if they hadn't received the PLOP would still get the COLA. So in other words, if you had someone's at $4,000 a month, they get the lump sum and it takes them down to $3,000, you still calculate a COLA on the $4,000 on a going forward basis. I don't want to speak for Tracy's team, but I know their concern is that the ongoing administrative process in tracking that original amount wouldn't create a problem in the next year or two. Well, everybody that's on this screen right now still has this plan, but 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, it could present a real administrative challenge. So I don't want to speak to that. I'm not the one to be doing the administrative work on that, but they think that's not very workable. But it is an option if you wanted to figure out a way to track it. So in summary, you have where under the existing language of the COLA ordinance, it wouldn't be applied. That would take no further action by in the ordinance itself. So there wouldn't need to be any follow-up with the council to say that, to ask that we've had this one issue arise with this amendment that we need to clarify. So if you decide, no, we don't want a COLA to apply to that PLOP piece, and it's the PLOP piece only that we're talking about, then we would just continue on as we are, no further language changes because the language is very clear. If you want the COLA to apply, then two things you needed to decide, okay, what does it apply? How's it calculated? Number one, and number two, then if you did want that, then I believe we would need to refine the ordinance and have an additional language change that specifies how it is done. I don't think it would be just to do it in a kind of quote unquote administrative or board policy would be sufficient, because the ordinance is too clear right now that it doesn't apply. So so I have one other item to report on, but I probably should stop there while I've just summarized that and send it back to one of the chiefs to further, I guess, ask, do you want to take further changes on this COLA issue with respect to the plot?
Thanks, Bob. I think one of the things when this came up, we had some offline discussions, and it was Chief Hargis and my opinion that the COLA would not apply to the plot. So that would, if I'm understanding you right, that would be no further changes would need to be addressed based on the way the ordinance is written right now. Is that correct?
That is correct.
It's open for discussion, but I think my position still holds true that if someone elects the plot, that they would not be eligible for a COLA on that plot. They would just still be eligible for the COLA on their remaining payments.
And that's my opinion as well, that sum is that lump sum they're going to take, and then their monthly benefits would be on the COLA. Any further disagreements or discussion do we need?
I think it would be helpful for the record just to have a motion that it was addressed and that was the position for that particular piece, and we at least have that in the record.
I'll make a motion that we proceed forward with the plop not being subject to the COLA, just the monthly benefits the person receives after that.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, and I'll take roll. Chief Hargis.
Yes.
Chief Beamer. Freeman.
Yes.
Mike Fisher.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Mr. Silvers.
Yes.
And Mr. Bologna.
Yes.
Okay, and Ryan Hubble.
Yes.
That's everyone.
Thank you. And then the second item also applies some subsequent administrative questions that came up in regard to the effect of the amendment and the new provisions that are in the amendment. And as the board may recall, is that, and I said at the beginning, actually, that as a part of that amendment, the actuarial mortality tables were updated to this 2010 version. One of the specific situations that was highlighted as Tracy and her team have benefit applications coming in and were calculating was how do those tables apply first and foremost. The situation that triggered the question was someone in late retirement. And so late retirement, for everyone's purposes, are a situation where you have someone reaches age 55, they have their full benefit, they have their 30 years. So they could retire, let's say that happened November 1st, receive their full benefit, and they could go take a job wherever else and continue to receive this benefit, receive monies from another job, and you really have no effect whatsoever on your normal retirement benefit. But as you know, an officer could, or firefighter may continue working for the city at that point, and when they do, their benefit increases because they could otherwise be receiving. So it's a wash when it comes to dollars, because they're receiving it later instead of receiving it now. But the later is there's an actuarial equivalent adjustment that is made to that later benefit that reflects them not having received it. And let's say they work till age 65, for example, then that will be significantly increased. Social Security works the same way. If you take your benefit at 66, it's one amount. If you wait till 70, for example, it's an increased amount that takes into effect that you haven't seen those monthly payments. So under the mortality tables and a specific situation that we have with a kind of an impending retirement, it's an individual that had 8 or 9 years, and it'll show you the effect of the tables. If the tables were applied, the new tables, which reflect a longer period of living, were applied to his benefit on a straight single life annuity, just for his lifetime annuity form of benefit. If they were applied, if we retroacted them back to when he turned 55, 8 or 9 years ago, and applied them throughout that whole entire 8 or 9 year period, it would have quite a detrimental effect on his monthly benefit that's calculated if it was applied retroactively, to the tune of, I don't have the number in front of me again, I think Tracy was at about $800 a month, $600 or $800 a month, I believe, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. It was pretty substantial.
On around a $6,000 a month benefit. So it's very substantial. The question that came to us legal was, well, is that legal? Is that the way this works? Can that happen? And I think the very short answer, absent the board taking some other type of action, and I don't know that you could take some other type of action, because we don't think it would be legal. It would be a forfeiture of an accrued benefit. That individual, literally every month that he delays his retirement, has a benefit up to that point in time, which is fixed and can't be taken away, even though it hasn't started to be paid to him. That's just kind of a general pension 101 pension law 101 principle that would apply in this situation. So for that specific situation, until that amendment was passed, August 18th of 2020, accrued benefits can't be forfeited. Can you change how future benefits, as they're being acquired each month, each day, each year, prospectively? Yes, you can certainly do that. And so the new mortality table could be implemented as it, and right now stands to be, is implemented as of August 18th, 2020. And any future accruals are affected under the new table. Well, that led kind of the second question in all of this was, well, what's the real effect of this then? Are there some significant decreases in future benefits? Is that what the board intended to do? Is that the practical consequence of this? And the answer is that it just really depends. I think the very short answer is there's no significant effects on any form of benefit. And in many cases, there's actually, and it'll take the actuaries to explain the following to you, but there's actually an increase in joint and survivor forms of benefits because how the tables affect a survivor when they're put into the mix of this. So it will really depend on what an individual elects. Mostly, we're only talking about individuals that enter this late retirement status that are continuing to accrue benefits as they go along, because that's when the actuarial equivalence is applied. So, so we spent quite a bit of time between myself and Tracy's team to first of all, I guess number one, for my side to confirm, there's no effect up till August 18th, just so it's very, very clear on that. And then going forward, yes, there may be some effect as these new tables are used, because you're using a new mortality in calculating benefits. But in some cases, it's going to be good, and in some cases, there may be a slight decrease as they're applied. In the one case that we use as an example that's coming up, the person's around 64. If he ends up electing a joint survivor, his benefit's going to be better. If he elects a straight annuity, it's going to be slightly less on a monthly basis. And that's just between that period of August 18th and a projected retirement, by the way, of early 2021. So for that, starting August 18th, then the new tables are applied, and that kind of gives you an example as to how this works. But I guess the purpose of this is just to make certain that the board realizes and doesn't have any questions about the legal opinion we've given, that we don't think you can forfeit any accrued benefit to that August 18th date. We don't have that, what could have been a very detrimental result to the one individual and a few others that are in that late retirement status. And then just kind of generally, so the board's aware that you are using new tables now. There will be, depending on the form of benefit that's selected, there may be, in effect, good or bad as a result of those new tables. But kind of the whole exercise, in a nutshell, illustrated those 2 points. So I'm not asking for any further board action on our part. We don't see that any further action is needed, as long as you are okay with how it's the effects of this. If you're not okay with it and you want to do something different than what we just described, then we might need to further tweak the amendment, and that the situation has illustrated. So I'll pass it back to one of the chiefs at this point.
Does anybody have any further questions about that? Okay, Bob, do you have anything else?
The board will be glad to hear that's the end of my report. That was it for today.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Do we have any other comments or business for today? Tracy?
I do. I would like the board's approval to reprogram the online benefit calculator that we make available to participants to incorporate all of the new optional forms of payment and the new mortality tables. I'd like approval for that, because there will be a small reprogramming charge to get all of those changes made and available to the participants online.
I'll make that motion to authorize Tracy's team to reprogram the online benefits calculator.
Second.
Okay, and I will call roll. Ryan Hubble.
Yes.
Chief Hargis.
Yes.
Chief Freeman.
Yes.
Mike Fisher.
Yes.
Mr. Bologna.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
And Mr. Silvers.
Yes.
That is everyone accounted for.
Thank you. I expect that to be completed within about a week or two, and I'll shoot out an announcement to the chiefs when that goes live, so that the participants have access.
Okay, thank you, Tracy.
You bet.
Do we have any other comments or business today?
56 minutes, Dave.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you, everybody.